I'm pleased today to host Mr. Dan Thompson, who's an instructional design and technology specialist at the Oklahoma State University's Center for Health Sciences. I'm sorry about that. Just a little background on Mr. Thompson. Dan currently assists faculty at OSU-CHS in course design and development while also introducing new methods of utilizing technology into their curriculum. He holds a Master of Science in Technology Enhanced Learning and a Bachelor of Science in Adolescent and Young Adult Education from the University of Dayton. His background includes teaching at the secondary level and assisting faculty in course design at the Ohio College of Podiatric Medicine. And he's a big fan of cookies and cream ice cream. So if anybody after this webinar would like to treat him to something very nice for his presentation, then cookies and cream ice cream might be a good way to go. Dan, if you don't mind moving over to the next slide for me, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. For any of the audience members out there, as we go through the webinar, it's more than natural for you to have questions. I would like you to know that this is a two-way street here. So you can chat with me or Dan throughout the webinar using the GoToWebinar control panel, which is over to the right-hand side of your screen. It's not going to look exactly like the one we've got in the slideshow here, but it's very similar. And there should be a box called questions in it. If you have a question you'd like to ask one of us, then just type it in there. We'll make sure that it gets answered. And please give all the questions you can think of. Don't be afraid to ask any questions. One more slide, Dan, please. Yes, I would like to let everybody know that next Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, so the same time as now, only on Tuesday, we have another webinar that's coming up. It's a little similar, and it's about using assessment technology in STEM courses, especially ones that are using the model of a flipped classroom. That'll be presented by Dr. Rob Petros from the University of North Texas. And down there you can see where you can go to register. I'll also include a link to that registration whenever I follow up with everybody with this webinar. You'll be receiving a recording of this webinar sometime within the next 48 hours or so. Without further ado, let's go ahead and hand it off to Dan.
All right. Thanks, Carter. Thanks for that great introduction, too. You made me sound better than I could do that, so I appreciate that. Also, I want to thank everyone for joining. Thanks for taking time out of your afternoon to participate in this. As Carter said, I currently work at Oklahoma State University Center for Health Sciences, which is our medical school here in sunny Tulsa, Oklahoma. And my role here really is getting involved in all facets of education. So I work with our medical educators, who are obviously primarily doctors, again, on all things education related. So that's really where I guess the process for the work that I'm doing here and then what became this webinar got started. A very brief background on our school. We're a four-year medical school. We have approximately 100 students per class, and so that's where the necessity for more types of low-stakes assessment came in, because when you're working with a large lecture in a big group like that, it's very easy to fall into that the high stakes, just multiple choice exams. So we really wanted to infuse our curriculum with these assessments that would help us to scaffold and help us to build the student learning throughout the semester as we moved on. So without further ado, the objectives for today, and really I guess my overall goal in the next hour, is to share the practical applications that we either have done here, are currently doing, or that I'm planning on doing in future courses. And I'd like you to be able to get the following things out of this. I hope that you would be able to apply these student evaluation tools that I present and use them appropriately in your courses. Of course, with that, I would like you to be able to create low-stakes assessments and improve your student learning and retention. And finally, utilize the assessment data to improve instructional methods. And I'll speak to that as we move on, specifically about some of the tools that ExamSoft allows us to have that we utilize here to improve our courses moving forward semester to semester and year to year. So I'm going to jump right into it. As Carter said at the beginning, as you have questions, please feel free to post them. Just to give you a quick overview, I'm going to speak about 6 different applications of the program today. And each one is distinctly different. So at the end of each area, I'll stop and take questions if there are any at that time. Additionally, I'm going to basically just give a quick overview of what each application is, and then I'll jump into how we use it and the benefits for our students, which is obviously the goal here, is to benefit our students and their success. So first things first is adding a pre-class assessment using an ExamSoft quiz or test. And essentially what that is when you give students an assignment, you add in an assessment piece prior to class. So the assignment can be anything from reading. I know here we use lecture capture, so if we give them a recording or video to watch, following that up with some type of assessment, and in turn having students turn that in by the prior to class time. Again, this is up to you and how comfortable you are with the turnaround time. We have some folks that are comfortable having this not turned in until 5 minutes before class begins. Other folks would have the preference of having it turned in the day before. And really, this next slide is going to speak to the different timings here. If you have them turn in the day before, it allows you to tailor your lesson to your student needs. So, for example, if students were to turn in noon the day before, a 10 a.m. lecture the next day, that gives you the rest of that afternoon to look at the student results and the student data. You can look at you can categorize questions if you're unaware. ExamSoft does allow us to categorize questions by either subject matter or by difficulty level. I mean, truly whatever category you'd like to break it down into. And that you can review the student stats, and it will indicate to you which areas you need to review with the students more in depth when you're in class. Additionally, I guess the flip side of that is if students perform really, really well at a high level on some of the questions in a certain area, that maybe you can briefly review it, but you're okay to move on because the students seem to have a strong grasp of that. Another benefit of the pre-class assessment is that it allows you to focus the students on what's really important within the reading assignment or lecture capture, whatever it is you may be using. So it's your way as the instructor to indicate to them, these are the important points, this is what I wanted you to pick up from that, and moving forward, this is the information you need to know as we continue with future lessons. That also works as a terrific exam prep as well, as these can be study aid questions later on. Another benefit of this is that it allows students to, it allows you to know that students are prepared for class. So I know oftentimes, and this even happens at the medical school level where we have these really intrinsically motivated students, that you can give an assignment, a reading assignment or whatever, and they may not have completed the assignment and they're not completely prepared for class. There's nothing worse for their fellow classmates if you have a group assignment and someone isn't ready to participate within that group. So this allows for, I guess this is a piece of accountability so that they are prepared for class, and it's a positive, it just sets a positive environment for the classroom. And finally, it provides you flexibility within the classroom. So, oftentimes if we are going to have an assignment before class where you expect students to be prepared, you're going to assess them in the class time. Well, if you want to use your class time for different methods or not have to take that transition time, you can take care of the assessment ahead of time, and then when class rolls around, you can jump right into whatever. If you're doing an active learning or if it's a lecture, whatever it may be, you can get right into it with having the assessment piece already taken care of. I guess really at this time, I don't know, Carter, if you have any, but if there are any questions before we switch gears to the next topic, we can.
There are not any quite yet.
Okay, and as they come in, again, feel free to hop in and interrupt me, and we will kind of jump back to the topic here.
Sure thing.
So moving along, The second topic I want to speak to is, again, another mostly out of the classroom type of assessment, and it's really a guided study. And this is something that we've utilized earlier this semester, most recently here, and I'll provide examples of that momentarily. But the guided study is really using these difficult multi-step questions, really a case study or a clinical problem set that requires the students to research the information. So we're not talking just while the answer still might be a multiple choice format, I'm not talking about typical multiple choice questions, but really something where you're going to scaffold their learning throughout the question itself. And as you can, a couple of the notes I have there, this should guide the students to the most important information. So if they're going to use it as a study guide, obviously focus on what's most important. And also, you're going to assess the students at a higher level through this, again, so that they're most prepared for the exam. This, for the most part, is an exam prep type idea. However, it is going to aid with the long-term learning and retention, as it's going to reiterate the important topics. So moving on to how to apply this, or the benefits that we can gain from this. So it's really beneficial to have this as a non-secure assessment, so meaning that students would have access to everything within their computer, internet access, notes access. It's really anything that they want to use as an aid to answer the questions. So the reason for that is because it's prompting the students to do this research and acquire the information. It truly is an active learning type of scenario where they're actively researching the information. So while we don't always have to think of active learning as a problem-based learning or team-based learning that occurs within the classroom, but we can also, the way that we set up these case studies, we can ask them to acquire the information in an active way. So for example, at the medical school here, neuroanatomy is and always has been a very difficult topic, subject for students to perform well at. There's just a ton of information that goes into it. And so with that being said, there was a necessity to guide our students' learning and their studying in a way that would focus their study on the most important topics. So using the example of the case study, we would have our students answer a case study question where really they're just trying to diagnose a patient. However, throughout the guided study application, they are doing every single piece of the diagnosis process. They're not just saying, the patient has this diagnosis, but they're completing every single step along the way, so that they have a full grasp of the knowledge of what actually goes into a diagnosis, as opposed to just giving the bottom line answer. And therefore, as far as the test prep, they're comfortable with the whole entire process of making the diagnosis, so they can answer questions appropriately about every step of that process. And as opposed to giving them multiple choice questions just to answer about that, again, we tailored it in a way where they are answering or doing the research to answer this question in a way that they're actively acquiring the information. An additional part of this is that students are encouraged to collaborate during this time. We all know there's a very important part of the learning process that is student collaboration and learning from your peers. So throughout this process, and our students, again, we're lucky to be at the medical school level. Our students take this seriously and do work collaboratively in a way that they can actually learn from one another, and they're not just getting answers to throw on the paper, because they know this is a test prep. At the end of this, answers are released after the upload deadline, so obviously we're not able to accept their answers anymore, but they're released in a way that it kind of rounds out a full study guide for them. So they've done the hard work in prepping for it. They have all of their notes, and then at the end they have our confirmation, or the confirmation from our faculty members that what the correct answers are, so to kind of round out that as a total study guide. So unless there's any questions, I will move on to our next topic.
I've got one.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, this attendee is wondering if you set it up as one just pretty complex question, or if it's a series of questions that as you're trying to walk the students through this research process.
We've done both, but truly it seems most beneficial when it was actually set up as one question. Obviously, the question would have different pieces to it, but one question that would still guide them through the research was appropriate. And then also for, if you think about how an exam is set up, having all of that information on the screen at a single time as opposed to flipping to the different screens is a benefit to the students so they can really see how everything ties together.
All right. Yeah, and then I actually have a little stem off of this question that I want to ask. Do you do any reporting off of what you get back from the students whenever they answer that question? That way you can see where they might need help?
Yeah, so it's interesting, since it is a take-home, by and large, they almost all, they do very well, they all score very highly. All of that is recorded and reported, but it's actually, since it's as a prep test or as a guided study, before an exam, we don't really have time to, in this specific scenario speaking of, we don't have time to go back and teach them throughout that process because it is so close to the exam. So we use it as far as correcting either the teaching methods or the quiz itself moving forward. And then it also allows, if there is something that really is startling, it does allow us to, potentially, look at the exam itself to make sure that the exam is at the appropriate level for the student learning.
That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for those questions, guys. All right, moving right along here. The next idea is actually, at its core, a pretty simple idea of it's just a frequent classroom assessment. So, I mean, it's so simple. I just have these 2 quick bullet points on it. As far as it's kind of an assessment break during class. So, again, speaking to our class size, having 100 students, it's oftentimes conducive to lecture. So it's obviously great to try and break up what's going on with a lecture, regardless of how engaging the speaker is. There can be some monotony that can go along with that. So having this break, and I'll speak to this, I guess, on the next slide a little bit more, and the benefits of it. But even if you're doing a class activity, I mean, if you're doing a problem-based learning or a group discussion, it's still something that's nice to come back and bring everything together. And I guess also reset their batteries a little bit as you move forward to the next part of the unit. And again, it's something that's short and sweet. It's just ask them to complete a short 5 or 10 minute quiz, and specifically, it helps a lot if it's in a long class session. So if you have one of those 2 or 3 hour courses, obviously you need some type of natural break to those, and this is a nice break again for that time. So truly, the idea with this is you'll have pre-made quizzes ready to go, and you can set a password to them if you want to make sure that students aren't actually taking the quiz as you're speaking. But as they can even have them the hope is that they have them pre-downloaded before coming in. They have them on their computer there, and then you would prompt them with a password and have them begin that just in their seats there. In this scenario, it's an individual assignment. I will get into a little bit more student collaboration ideas in a bit here, though. So again, moving on here, regardless of the teaching method, having more frequent classroom assessment can aid in student retention. Obviously, being able to reiterate points, going over topics multiple times is something that is going to aid in student retention. As I mentioned previously, it will provide this, a natural break within the class to complete these assessments. And it can also, and I mentioned this in some of the previous methods, it can help focus students to the important topics of each lesson. So one thing that is really valuable through the assessment process, and especially in these smaller, low-stakes assessments as you build up for the high stakes, it is a way to communicate with your students what the most important topics are, what you value as the professor, and kind of key them in also to your question writing style so they're comfortable when you get to the high stakes that it's all about the content. and there's nothing related, there's no other issues involved as far as, there's no guessing game. It really helps take the guessing out of it and to have your students prepared to the best of your and their ability. Additionally, it can help establish a transition to the following lesson or subject matter. Oftentimes we talk about this in education where you really want to have a smooth transition from the lesson prior to the one that you're doing and then setting up the next lesson. So not only can you kind of recap what you're doing in what you have done in the previous lesson and help solidify that with the students, but you can also tailor the questions in a way that can prepare them for what's ahead and kind of just make a smooth transition there. Now, you may be thinking, we have clickers. This is what clickers are for. There's plenty of institutions that use clickers, and this is also a natural method for clickers. However, the data that you can get from these frequent classroom assessments is really valuable when you use ExamSoft, especially if you're going to use it for grades. It's nice to have ExamSoft is really reliable with keeping with not losing any student data or student answers, but you can review after the fact. So, for example, let's say you did a group activity and then you followed it up with a short classroom assessment, and you reviewed the results afterward, and the students performed really well on that classroom assessment. Let's say the next section or in a different class section you teach it using you lecture, and the students take one of these classroom assessments. Let's say they do better or they don't do as well as they did on the quiz when they did group learning. Well, that can indicate to you as a professor what is your most successful instructional method, what you implement best, and what your students learn from best. So moving forward within that course, within that semester, and then long term to the upcoming years, you can really learn what's the most beneficial instructional methods for your students. And while you can get that type of data from the clickers, I've just found it especially with being able to utilize the category feature I mentioned previously, it really helps you give the data that you need to break it down to teach each individual subject matter and lesson appropriately for, again, what the whole point is student learning, and student retention, and student success. So at this time, I'm ready to move on to the next one. Carter, again, jump in if you have anything. If not, I will cruise right along here.
Yeah, one question, and actually go back to that last slide before you move on. Sorry about that. So whenever I have one person that's asking a question, and I hope this covers it, I'm going to try to make it a little bit more topical for what you were just talking about. Can you give like an example of whenever you would look at the data to see which instructional methods are the most effective that has actually happened in your program?
To be honest, I wish we could, but it's actually something that we're kind of looking at right now. We're in that process. So it's funny, this is one of the ones that I'm really excited about because it's something I'm trying to implement as we speak. So,
all right.
Unfortunately, I don't have the long-term data because this is one of the ones that's just getting off the ground.
Okay. Okay, then actually I'll modify the question then. How would you maybe set it up to get it off the ground? Like, would you tag the questions with the teaching style or with the activity style? Would it be something like that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It would really be, and we try to tag our questions as far as the subject matter, and then with this it would be the teaching method used, and then also the difficulty level of the questions. So we just use Bloom's taxonomy for that. And so that kind of gives you the background that you need, the background knowledge that you need to know for every single facet. So the teaching strategy, the difficulty of the question, and the subject matter itself. And when you're able to look at all of those stats, the hope is that we'll be able to see which are most successful, not only, again, for our students, but also for the specific subject matter, just because some subjects are better taught in different methods, obviously.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving along to our fourth application. This is the simplest one. I'm sure there's plenty of people that already do this, but I added it in just because it is a helpful idea that can contribute to the student learning, and it's simply just a take-home quiz. Now this idea is not to guide the studying like we talked about the guided studying, but it's really just to serve as a prep for an exam. It's just truly, I mean, I call it a take-home quiz. It really could be called a practice exam too. And here we actually use those terms interchangeably. So as you have there on the screen, quizzes with similar content, similar question style as the exam. Again, it's an exam prep. What we currently do, and actually it's funny, we have one of these active right now. Students can take the quiz on their own time and when they're most prepared. So, for example, we have, this is a current example. We have an exam on this upcoming Monday, and so yesterday we released a quiz to the students. Again, similar in content, question style as the exam, and the students have until Friday afternoon to complete the quiz. So they can go about this, in any way that they're comfortable. They can even go through this week of class sessions, and after each session, if they pick up something that's going to aid them in, completing the question, they can do that as well. Since it is, it's a I'll get into this type is a non-secure exam, and I'll get to that more on the next slide. But it's just something they can keep running on their computer, and they can take notes as they move along, and and then flip over to the quiz when necessary. And it really allows them that flexibility. Again, we're not trying to trick them at all. We're trying to give them the information up front on what the most important content is, and also just kind of clued in on how the actual exam is going to run. And that final point there, it'll give the students the opportunity to gauge their knowledge of the course material. I'll really speak to that more in a moment when I talk about the secure option. So truly, there's two options. We've used them both. I'll speak to both. There's a secure and a non-secure assessment. So the non-secure, again, is allowing students full access to their computer. They can get on the internet, notes, whatever they want to access through their quiz prep. And again, they can take it on their own time. They can research it. Similar to the guided study, this allows them to actively learn it when necessary. We've done this with courses. We're doing it right now. We've found success in that. The secure method is that students can still take it, when they would like, but if they're going to take it as really a true practice for the exam. So, for example, we have a course where I think students may have had a tough time gauging where they're at, because if you're going through these questions and you're able to look up the answer, you can actually talk yourself into saying, oh yeah, I knew that, I'm comfortable with that, and you may not actually be comfortable with it. So the secure option allows students to get a true gauge of where they're at with the subject matter. It also allows we also allow them to see their scores when they're done, so there's an immediate feedback there. So if they take it and they get a 55% on the practice quiz, they know that they obviously need to go back and review that information. And then moving forward beyond that, we post the answers with the rationale after the upload deadline. So the students, again, it's turned from an assessment to where they're testing themselves, or an active learning assessment where they're researching the information, to a study guide for them. So at the end, they have all the information that they need to prepare for the exam. Just to kind of, I guess I skipped over this point a little bit previously too with the guided study. These are for points as well. I'm sure we all understand that students need that carrot usually of the point to make sure that they're really taking everything seriously. You can make this a number of ways. We've had where every question counts as a point, and you can have a 30 or 40 point take-home practice quiz or 30 or 40 point guided study. That can also get a little overwhelming, where the students are taking so much of their time in trying to complete these assessments that they kind of lose focus on using them appropriately as a study aid. So if you can also reduce the points. So, for example, having students receive 3 points if they score in the 90th percentile, and 2 points in the 80th percentile, or so forth and so on. And that can obviously be set up to whatever works best within your course. But that way, it's still emphasized as important because there are points assigned to it, but it's also not going to make students, spend an exorbitant amount of time trying to complete this and losing focus of the fact that it's a test preparation. So with that, I'm ready to move on to the next point, unless there's anything that you'd like me to touch back on.
There's one question on
all right.
that. On the secure assessments, the attendee just asked if you would reiterate what you mean by secure.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Versus non-secure.
Yeah, that's a great question. I just went right past that. So as I mentioned previously, the non-secure allows students access to everything on their computer as they take the quiz. Literally, ExamSoft is kind of like a Word document. They can minimize and maximize it. The secure shuts down everything on their computer, meaning they have no access to anything but the quiz itself. So they can't minimize it off their screen. It's the only application that's on their computer at that time. So they must take the quiz straight through without any aid on their computer of internet, notes on the computer, anything. And that's why we use that as more of a true practice exam. So they can sit there and actually challenge themselves to answer the questions with their own knowledge as opposed to being allowed to flip through their computer. And when we do that too, when we we do have it secure, it is explained to them that it is for their benefit to take it as a true practice quiz. With that being said, going back to the points idea here, we don't really emphasize the points there because we do want them to complete it and do their best as far as testing their own knowledge. For example, one of our courses, if you just score over a 70, you get a bonus point for it. So there's still that element of points, but it's not to the point where you would be encouraging students to go through their notebook or paper notes or anything along the way. Thanks for that question. I'm sorry I breezed right past that before.
No big. Thank you so much.
All right. So moving on, we have 2 more topics to cover, and I say these 2 for last because they're my favorite too. The first is the idea of peer review. So most usages of ExamSoft, I would assume, and for us, this is how it's been until recently, it's high-stakes testing, and it's really made to keep information separate. You want everyone they're taking a high-stakes exam, so that makes sense that you would keep information separated there. Well, in this case and the next one I'm going to touch on, it's really about student collaboration and kind of flipping the knowledge separation into a collaborative effort by the students. So with the peer review, as I had there on the first point, a lot of times we assess students only through multiple choice, and that's something that is easy to do. In the last 2 institutions I've worked at, they've been large class medical schools, and it's very easy to fall in that trap of you have so many students, let's just do multiple choice. It's just most conducive to making things run well. However, it's not always most conducive for student learning. So with this idea, it's assigning students short answer essay questions. So ExamSoft does have the ability to use these types of questions. You can set a character limit. So if you're concerned about having a student write a book when it should only be like 140 characters, if you want to essentially make them tweak their answer, you can do that. And this allows them again to stay focused on what the actual question is and not have them elaborate like they're writing a paper. But moving forward, as if you're listening and thinking I do have 80 to 100 students, I don't want to grade a short answer essay exam that's going to take forever. Well, that's why the peer review idea comes in, that to save time on the grading and also to aid student learning, we're going to distribute student answers within a small group setting. The small groups then collaboratively provide feedback on the essay answers, and I'll get into the specifics are more in the next slide here. And then I'll also touch base with an example on how we have a structure in place to do that. So ExamSoft enables us the ability to print student answers anonymously. So you can take student answers, print them off, and students don't have to worry about other students, being judgmental about the content of their answers. It truly will just be about content with no, individual name assigned to it. So, in the small groups, you will pass out or assign the answers that their classmates gave to review. So, the best case scenario, as an example, is we have groups here, I want to say about 6 students. So that group would get an envelope of 6 student answers. And so each student would have their own set of short answers to read over. The group would get together, establish answers as a group for these questions, and then they would go through and just kind of read through as a group if they had any that they wanted to discuss and give feedback, actually, on the paper, like they're grading it like, a high school teacher would, and just jot down feedback for the students. And obviously at the end, the feedback will go back to the original author of the answers. So a couple of great things about this that I really enjoy is that the process provides it provides a review on both ends. It provides a learning opportunity for, obviously at the very beginning, it's a learning opportunity as you're answering these short answer questions. When you're in your small group reviewing the questions, you obviously, or excuse me, reviewing the answers, you have the opportunity to learn from it throughout that process. You're working collaboratively with your classmates to help come up with feedback for your fellow classmates, and in that time, you're going to, have the opportunity to actually, learn the material more in depth yourself. And finally, the students then get that feedback from their peers. I use the word quality in there because that's, especially at the medical school level, when students are asked to give feedback of each other, it is taken seriously, and they do a quality job of giving feedback that is usable for, by their peers as a study guide. So, again, just looking at the whole process again, you would answer the questions, submit it to a small group anonymously. They would give their feedback, positive or constructive, and then the original author of the answer would get that feedback. The way that you're able to do it anonymously and still know who it returns to is you can have it just print the student ID on top. So we would know via the student ID who it needs to go back to. But again, there's no student name assigned to it. And then finally, the last piece of this is we would post the answers through ExamSoft so that the students could see the rationale. So they would would again kind of complete this as a learning opportunity and as a study guide moving forward to where they have the faculty provided answers. Are there any questions moving with that before we move forward?
Yes, there is.
All right.
This one is very straightforward. I'm not even going to have to rephrase it. It's to keep peer review rigorous. Do you grade the reviews that students give to others?
No, the students understand here that if they're going to give feedback, what the expectation is. So that is simply just a group activity that they complete themselves. So it doesn't. Again, it takes away that faculty responsibility to have to go through and grade all of these papers. If there is a dispute or if there is a question of faulty feedback, then that would be obviously that would need to be addressed. But no, this is truly just a learning exercise, a group exercise. Points can be assigned, participation points can be assigned, as fit if you see the need for that. But in this type of scenario, it really is just an exercise.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for the question. All right, and on to our last topic here is that of a team competition. So again, I saved this one for last again because it's my favorite one, and I think by favorite I mean I think it has really great ability to aid in the student learning process and really help student success, and really is an important piece with student collaboration. So as you can see on your screen here, again, it's a small group activity. Students are assigned to create quiz questions. So I would recommend at least one question per student in each group so that at the very least someone is responsible for creating one piece of new content. After those questions are then turned into the faculty members, so they are faculty reviewed before they would be posted for students, obviously for, to make sure they're appropriate as far as the content and difficulty levels. And then and score, the students would then can take the quiz as a group or as individuals with their scores contributing to the group score. So with that idea is if you want them to go to different corners of the classroom, breakout rooms, whatever your physical space allows for, you can have students sit around one computer and talk collaboratively about it and come up with a consensus for an answer. And so there's obviously a definite learning opportunity there for students as they are discussing the answers. Or if you are afraid that you have a couple of strong students in each group and that they're going to kind of give the answers to the group and pull them right along, and not everyone in the group has the chance to participate, then you can do an individual scenario where they would sit there and take it as a normal quiz on their computer, but then the grades would just count as as part of the team points. Again, this can be a bonus point thing. This can be whatever you see fit. The reason for that, the group having the groups write the quiz questions, is that even though you may be responsible for writing one question as an individual, with it being a group assignment and a group competition, obviously your group is going to learn all of the questions that come out of their group. So they'll be preparing for 6 or 7 or 8 questions and have the knowledge base of that as opposed to just the one question. So whether you're doing the group quiz idea or if you are doing the individuals, so that team atmosphere makes that important. Really with the application and benefits, so it allows students to think critically about the difference between the correct answers and the distractors. So think about this as question writers ourselves. For me personally, and I know I've talked to colleagues about this, the most difficult piece of writing a quality exam item is coming up with the quality distractors. And we know as the test creators that you want to have distractors that are close enough that they could potentially be thought of as the right answer, but not overly difficult to where it's a minute difference. But at the same time, you don't want these lollipop distractor choices where they can easily throw those out and get the correct answer. So when the students are writing the questions themselves, this gives them that opportunity to not only learn about what the subject, or what the answer is for that question, but they're also going to learn about all the distractors as well and have a more, just a broader knowledge, I guess, of every distractor that they're choosing. Again, because they need to be able to decipher between why is A correct and why are B, C, and D incorrect. And again, the team competition aspect is what is the carrot for that, because they want to win the team competition to get the bonus points. So they are going to give questions with quality distractors. It's not going to be something where they can just throw out anything that they want just to try and get points for submitting questions. If some folks aren't interested in the team competition, one benefit of having them write their own questions is that they can be banked and used on actual quizzes, and they can be used, released as a whole study guide for themselves and then their classmates. They can compile a large list of practice questions. However, and honestly, I recommend that it would be used as a competition, because it will increase that level and the quality of questions that you're getting from them, to make sure you do have appropriate distractors, and at the same time, that's the piece that's going to make it a really rich learning activity, is that when they are working between the different types of distractors throughout the process. And that kind of puts a bow on my presentation. If there's any questions now on the team competition or anything throughout the last 40 minutes or however long I spoke, I would love to take those now.
Okay, one question on the last point you were on. Can you give just like a brief use case, basically, for this team competition? Like, what's an example of a time you've used it?
Oh, yeah, actually, I'm glad you asked that one, because that's something that we're in the process of implementing now, and that's so in our curriculum, each course has 5 to 6 different subject components that go into the overall course. So there's very distinct subject matters within that, aid to the overall knowledge of the course. So with that being said, when I was saying we'll have 5 or 6 questions per group, for our sake, that is having each group make at least 1 question on each of the subject matters. So they're covering all of their bases as far as the content in the course. This can be, it's really, again, the overall line theme, I guess, what I was talking about is as a test prep, and it does help, it is a low stakes assessment that does aid for the exam prep and also for more, scaffolding along, in the student retention of knowledge. So again, those are, since we have the questions in each subject, those are compiled. Yes, you are going to have some redundancy of questions, and with we have a little more than 100 students in each of our classes. So even if there is some redundancy, we'll still have plenty of unique items. But that allows us to cover all of our bases, and we'll get several different questions within each subject matter. So again, it works as a study guide for each different subject matter, and then as a whole, then it allows for it to be one large study guide in preparing for an exam. With this, that actually works well for a final exam type of prep, because there is so much that goes into preparing for the final that this is just another way to aid in that process. And then again, the questions are just imported into ExamSoft, and if you're not familiar with that process, there's a very quick, easy way of importing a large number of questions into the program in like one fell swoop. So that's done, and it's turned into an assessment and ready to send out. And again, at the end of all of it, the idea is that the students will get the answers, and so